Billions of pesos spent on flood control pero tuwing malakas ang ulan, may baha agad. Yung iba, lubog talaga. And honestly, I share the frustration. Nung bata hanggang college student na ako, may mga pagkakataon na kailangan kong lumusong sa baha para lang makauwi. I even remember a family friend's teenage son die because of leptospirosis. When the flood control projects came under the spotlight, even the so-called Nepo babies were called out. Some even deactivated their YouTube accounts after being dragged online. But here's the thing. While corruption, overpriced projects, and ghost contracts often dominate the headlines, research and even government agencies keep pointing to other issues that also need attention. Outdated drainage systems, lack of storm drains, poor urban planning, governance gaps, and improper waste disposal. And since this is a real estate channel, I'll focus on one angle that gets overlooked: how flood control failures affect property values, what it means for your real properties, and how you can make smarter decisions moving forward. Flood control failures are not just a Metro Manila story. They're happening across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And in many of these places, they're tied directly to the recent flood control scandal. Metro Manila. The MMDA itself admitted that many drainage lines are antiquated. Lumang-luma na dahil ilang dekada na mula nang gawin. Their size can't handle today's climate-driven downpours. I didn't see it myself, but social media was buzzing about the August 30, 2025 storm. Pag-asa reported nearly a week's worth of rainfall in just 1 hour. Kaya kahit yung mga barangay sa Quezon City na dati hindi binabaha, biglang lubog. Manggahan Floodway, Marikina, Rizal, and Laguna. The Manggahan Floodway was built to protect Metro Manila by diverting excess water from the Marikina River into Laguna de Bay. Pero hindi siya kompleto. The plan was for the floodway to work in conjunction with the Parañaque Spillway, which would release that water out to Manila Bay. Dahil hindi natuloy ang spillway, wala talagang labasan ang tubig. Naiipon lang to at ang ending, regular na pagbaha sa Marikina, Rizal at mga lakeshore towns ng Laguna. Bulacan, Central Luzon. Bulacan is situated in the Pampanga River Basin, so it has long been flood-prone. Billions of pesos have been poured into flood control projects here. Pero hanggang ngayon, buong bayan tulad ng Kalumpit at Agonoy ay lumulubog tuwing malakas ang ulan. That's why Bulacan became ground zero in the recent scandal. In Pampanga, the Candaba swamp is supposed to hold excess water, but with heavier rainfall and unchecked development, more towns now go underwater during the monsoon season and end up under a state of calamity. Cebu City. In Cebu, city officials have called it a broken system. Drainage plans are outdated, waterways are clogged, and some storm drains are missing or incomplete. This results in flash floods even during ordinary rains. In fact, last August 15 and 18, 2025, heavy rains paralyzed parts of the city and Metro Cebu roads, and homes went under. Traffic came to a standstill and classes were suspended. Iloilo and Bacolod, Western Visayas. In Iloilo's Haro district, flooding has always been part of the story because Haro sits on a natural floodplain. But residents have raised a bigger concern. Some flood control projects might actually be making things worse, redirecting water into their neighborhoods instead of away from them. Meanwhile, in Bacolod, the city has been forced to keep clearing clogged waterways filled with plastic and silt. Cagayan de Oro. In Cagayan de Oro, heavy siltation and riverbank erosion reduced the river's carrying capacity. Projects are underway, but many remain incomplete. For a city scarred by Typhoon Sendong, every gap in flood control feels like history waiting to repeat itself. Davao City. The city has mapped more than 260 flood-prone zones. Despite ongoing projects, rapid growth continues to outpace the drainage capacity. So those are some of the areas where flood control failures are occurring. Of course, it's not a complete list, but you'll notice many of them are also undergoing urbanization. At yan mismo ang dahilan kung bakit mahalaga ito sa real estate. May development, pero andyan ang peligro. This includes flood risk, and that risk doesn't just scare buyers. It's something we formally account for in appraisal practice, both as an environmental risk and through its impact on marketability. That's why I'll walk you through 5 layers that show exactly how this risk lowers value. And the first most obvious layer is physical damage. Floods are destructive. It weakens the home's foundation, warps floors and ceilings, ceilings, and ruins the walls and interiors. Take note, however, that these are not just cosmetic issues. Hindi pwedeng takpan lang ng pintura. They're structural problems that cost a lot to repair. In appraisal, we account for this using the market comparison approach. We compare the subject property with other similar ones that were recently sold. Now, if one house has flood damage, it can't be valued the same as a house in perfect condition. That's where what we call a condition adjustment comes in. In simple terms, we lower the value to account for the cost of repairs. Dahil kahit mapaayos yung binahang bahay, iba pa rin siya. Parang cellphone na nabasa ng tubig dagat. Kahit gumagana pa, iba pa rin ang performance kumpara sa phone na never nabasa. The second layer is all about long-term costs and income loss. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang ito one-time problem. Maaring paulit-ulit ang gastos taon-taon at matagal na sakit sa ulo. For homeowners, these recurring expenses include pumps to remove water, drainage repairs, mold treatment, and even preventive tools like flood barriers. For investors, floods mean a direct hit to income. For rental properties like apartments or commercial spaces, appraisers use the income approach wherein a property's value depends on its ability to generate net operating income or NOI. Sa madaling salita, ang tinitingnan namin ay kung magkano ang kinikita ng property pagkatapos ng lahat ng gastos. This is where flooding hits hard. Higher expenses and lost rental days directly impact NOI, and under the PVS, returns must always reflect the property's inherent risk. Simply put, every peso lost to repairs or vacancies is a peso less in income, and when income goes down, property value follows. The third layer is insurance premiums, and this one usually surprises people. Akala ng karamihan na kung pareho ang premium, pareho rin ang protection. Pero kapag flood-prone ang lugar, madalas hindi ganun ang nangyayari. Insurers always assess risk. Yes, the base rate is the same. In fact, the Insurance Commission reinstated the minimum catastrophe rate in 2024 at 0.05% of the insured value. That's 500 pesos for every 1 million pesos insured. But the real catch is the deductible. This is the amount you pay out of pocket before the insurance kicks in. Ibig sabihin, bago tumulong ang insurance, kailangan saluhin ng may-ari ang parte ng gastos. Let's make this simple with an example. Home A is in a safe elevated area. The owner pays 5,000 pesos yearly premium with a deductible of 50,000 pesos. If flooding causes 1 million pesos in damage, the owner pays 50,000 pesos and insurance covers 950,000 pesos. Home B is in a flood-prone subdivision. Same 5,000 pesos premium but with a deductible of 200,000 pesos. For the same 1 million pesos damage, the owner pays 200,000 pesos and insurance covers only 800,000 pesos. See the difference? Pareho ang premium na binayaran pero yung bahay na nasa flood-prone area, mas mabigat ang kailangang bayaran bago pa makatulong ang insurance. Since it costs more to protect a property, the market adjusts. Appraisers record it in reports, banks account for it, and buyers demand discounts. The fourth layer is something invisible but very real. Stigma. Stigma works like this. Imagine a subdivision where only a few streets flood during heavy rain. Kahit yung ibang bahagi ay nasa mataas na lugar at hindi binabaha, pwede pa ring mabansagan ng buong lugar bilang bahain. Result, even houses on higher ground face weaker demand and lower values simply because buyers see the subdivision as risky. The same goes for condos. Let's say only the basement parking or the ground floor floods. Once the building gets a reputation for being flood-prone, all units take a hit in resale value because of the stigma attached to the address. Appraisers call this a marketability adjustment under the PVS. Ibig sabihin nito ay binabawasan ng value ng property dahil sa mga bagay na hindi na kayang baguhin. And this matters because reputation directly shapes demand. Fewer willing buyers mean weaker demand, and weaker demand forces sellers to cut prices. A marketability adjustment is simply our way of quantifying that reality. Global studies confirm the same pattern. Just being labeled as flood-prone is enough to pull property values down. Keep this in mind. Reputation lasts longer than the flood waters, and it's the value of the property that sinks with it. The fifth layer is all about liquidity and bank valuation. Under the PVS, appraisers are required to state the exposure time. Gaano katagal bago realistically maibenta ang property? And for flood-prone areas, exposure time is always longer. The longer it takes to sell, the more buyers negotiate down and the market discounts the value. There's another impact. Banks rely on these appraisals. When appraisers lower the market value to reflect flood risk, banks also lower the loanable amount. So kahit gusto mong ibenta ng 5 million pesos, kung ang bank appraisal ay 4 million pesos, hanggang doon lang ang basehan ng loan ng buyer. And since banks usually finance only up to 70 to 80% of appraised value, ang ma-approve lang na loan ay around 2.8 to 3.2 million pesos. That means the buyer has to cover the rest in cash and not just the 20 to 30% equity, but also the gap between your asking price and the bank's valuation. And in the Philippines, where most purchases are bank finance, the bank ceiling effectively becomes the market ceiling. Those are the 5 layers through which flood risk impacts value. Each layer chips away at value from a different angle, but together, they show why flood-prone properties struggle in the market. And it doesn't end with individual homes or condos. Flood risk sets off ripple effects across the entire real estate market. But before we continue, a quick break. If you're finding value in this video, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee for those late-night editing sessions, sending a super thanks if you've got urgent questions, or simply sharing this video with someone who might need it. This channel is still small and producing content like this takes time and resources. And honestly, a bigger YouTuber has republished my work for his own gain, disguised as commentary. That's why support from viewers like you really matters. It helps me keep creating original, useful content that you can trust. Flood risk doesn't just hurt individual properties, it reshapes entire markets. As a broker, I've seen this firsthand. Homeowners in flood-prone areas often end up selling at a discount just to relocate. When this happens across many households, the result is oversupply in risky locations. Sobrang dami listings pero kulang ang buyers kaya lalo pang bumabagsak ang presyo. At the same time, demand shifts to safer areas. Buyers and investors prefer locations with credible flood control and reliable infrastructure. That competition drives appreciation there. Economists call this a two-speed market. In the fast lane, you have the safer areas like the elevated parts of Cebu, such as Lahug and Busay, where terrain naturally keeps flooding away. Or master-planned districts like BGC, developed on former military land but designed with modern drainage and infrastructure. That's why unlike older parts of Metro Manila, BGC doesn't suffer from the same flooding issues. Demand stays strong and properties move quickly. In the slow lane, you have the flood-prone communities. Here, stigma, long exposure times, and weak demand drag prices down. A clear example is the Candaba area, which continues to carry the weight of its flooding reputation. Overall, safe areas move forward while flood-prone communities get left behind. So, what does this mean for you, whether you're a home buyer, a seller, or an investor? For home buyers, don't just look at the house design or the condo's amenities. Look at the location, kasi yan hindi mo na mababago. You can renovate a house or upgrade a unit, but if the area is flood-prone, we talked earlier about higher costs, bigger insurance burdens, and of course, stigma. Pero hindi lang yan. Think about daily life. Kahit hindi pasukin ng baha ang tirahan mo, pero hindi madaanan ng kalsada at kailangan mo nang pumasok sa trabaho o sa school, malaking oportunidad at oras ang nawawala. You'll also need to stock up on food and essentials kasi minsan stranded talaga. So when home hunting, here's what you can actually do to protect yourself. Number 1, check the flood hazard level of the location on NOAA, or Nationwide Operational Assessment of Hazards by the UP Resilience Institute. I'll put the link in the video description. If the risk level is high, it doesn't always mean automatic no. Some high-risk areas have flood mitigation infrastructure like dikes or pumping stations. So the key is whether the floods are manageable and roads remain passable. Of course, if the flood hazard level is low, then that's a good sign. Number 2, search social media during rainy season. Madalas mas mabilis pang updates kaysa official reports kasi mga Pilipino, minsan real-time yung pag-post ng baha sa Facebook. Number 3, ask the neighbors. The sari-sari store owner, tricycle driver, driver, subdivision guard, or even staff at nearby businesses. Likas naman tayong makwento kaya malalaman mo ang totoong kwento kung bahain ang lugar o hindi. Number 4, visit during rainy days if you can. It's practical due diligence. Walang tatalo sa makita mong aktual. Number 5, don't wait for a bank appraisal. Check the market comps, or if you have the budget, hire a licensed real estate appraiser. It's still cheaper than losing hundreds of thousands later. A few hours of checking now can save you years of stress later. At the end of the day, buying a home isn't just about the property itself. It's about the peace of mind that comes with it. For sellers, let's be real. If your property is in a flood-prone zone, you can't price it at a premium. Buyers today are more aware, lalo na kung pinanood nila yung video na to. Here's what you can do. Number 1, be transparent. Don't hide the flood history. Buyers will find out anyway. Mas mabuti pang ikaw na mismo ang mag-explain. Number 2, document flood-proofing upgrades. Did you raise the flooring, install a pump, improve drainage, keep receipts, photos, and even permits? Buyers and banks trust paper trails. Number 3, work with a licensed real estate broker who knows how to position your property. A good broker will highlight your home strengths like accessibility, renovations, or price adjustments while being upfront about the risks. Number 4, price realistically. Look at comparable sales in your subdivision, especially for homes with the same flood exposure. Kung lahat ng kapitbahay nagbenta ng mas mababa dahil baha, huwag kang mag-expect na mahal mong mabebenta ang property mo kahit gaano pa kamahal ang ginastos mo for renovation. Number 5, prepare for negotiations. Buyers will factor the flood risk into their offers, so set your expectations and be ready to adjust or sell at a discount. For you to close the deal faster, don't fight the market. Work with it. Be realistic and be transparent. For investors, flood risk is something you need to build into your return on investment or ROI. Don't just compute yields on paper. If the location is flood prone, the real returns can look very different. For land investors, with lots, the strategy is usually appreciation. You buy today and expect the land to be worth more later. Pero in flood prone areas, mabagal ang pagtaas ng halaga. Minsan pa nga, hindi talaga tumataas. Akala mo lang tumaas dahil lang sa inflation. So only buy if the price is deeply discounted upfront. Kung same price lang siya sa lot na nasa safer area, wag na. Always check the LGU's Comprehensive Land Use Plan or CLUP. If there are credible flood control projects, appreciation might recover. Pero factor in corruption risk kasi kahit may plano kung hindi naman na-execute ng maayos, sayang lang. And when you model ROI, don't project the usual 5 to 7% yearly growth you might expect in safer areas. Assume only 1 to 2% or even flat if the location is risky. For investors of rental income producing properties, for rental properties, you already learned earlier that flood risk lower cash flow. But when you're the landlord, the impact feels even bigger kasi every vacancy or repair means cash you were counting on is suddenly gone. Imagine you own a 3-door apartment, each unit renting for 10,000 pesos a month. On paper, that's 30,000 pesos monthly or 360,000 pesos a year. Looks solid, right? Pero kapag bumaha at naapektuhan ng lugar, tenants might leave or new renters may hesitate to move in. Even just one empty unit means 10,000 pesos lost every month. If 2 units sit vacant for a couple of months, that's already 40,000 pesos gone from your annual cash flow. On top of that, the landlord still shoulders the cleanup and prevention costs. And if your property has a reputation for flooding, you may also need to spend more on ads or offer rental discounts, adding another 5,000 to 10,000 pesos in marketing just to fill vacancies. That's why smart landlords stress test their numbers. Don't assume your apartments will be occupied 12 months straight. Budget for at least 1 to 2 months of possible vacancies or repairs, plus the added costs of marketing and maintenance. Because if you don't plan for these risks, flood-related expenses and lost rent can steadily reduce your ROI. What looked like 8% on paper can easily shrink to 5 to 6% in reality. Overall, whether you're buying your first home, selling in a flood-prone area, or managing your investment, the principle is the same. Flood risk isn't just about getting wet. It shapes costs, demand, and ultimately property values. Flood control isn't just an infrastructure issue, it's a property value issue. Smarter decisions protect not only your financial investment but also your family's security. But let's be honest, flood management isn't just about billion-peso projects, it's also about households and communities doing their share, because the choices we make every day affect the long-term value of the places we live in. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of my next videos. I'm Manggahan Clemente, licensed real estate broker and appraiser, and this is Own Property PH.